Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football post spring practice, post spring transfer portal. This is the time period where you kind of take a step back and try to get a feel for hey, what were the programs that won the offseason? What were the programs that made the necessary additions that they can take a massive step forward in the 2025 year in Oklahoma? They're on the short list of teams that got a lot better over the last couple of months. Want to get into the five most important new faces coming into this Oklahoma program heading into 2025. Now, I'll start right off the bat and say I cheated. I included six names because I think six names are really important to talk about when you're talking about Oklahoma going into 2025. But I want to take a step back and just appreciate the work that Brent Venables did this offseason. You look at this Oklahoma offense in 2024 was one of, if not the worst at the power four level. Couldn't run the football, couldn't protect the passer, didn't have really any wide receivers at the end of the season that were high level impact SEC dudes because of all the injuries. What's a quick way to completely revamp your offense in one offseason? Get the quarterback right, get the offensive coordinator right. And you can argue both of those two things were not good enough for Oklahoma in 2024. You could make the argument that Oklahoma has one of, if not the best quarterback in the SEC in 2025, along with probably making the best offensive coordinator hire that we saw in the sport during this offseason. They got the two most important things right on the offensive side of football heading into 2025, two things that clearly were not right in 2024. That's where it starts. We're going to start with John Mateer. We're going to start with Ben Arbuckle. But there are some other names on this roster that they've added over the last couple of weeks and months that will have an immediate impact on this football team in 2025. Before we get into it, as always, to the Oklahoma fans, I want to start with this. I can't thank you guys enough. It's been very fun talking this football team over the last couple of months, and the amount of Oklahoma fans who've been dialed in during the offseason. I'm talking the February, March, April months. It's been amazing. Can't thank you guys enough. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Much more importantly, there's a ton of different ways to stack these new additions that Oklahoma has made. Let it fly in the comment section. Without further ado, let's get into it. Now, one thing we all agree on here, John Mateer, I'm just going to lump in Ben Arbuckle in this conversation. John Mateer, Ben Arbuckle, by far the two biggest impacts or the two biggest new faces that will have an impact on this team in 2025. I've been very, very clear. Like, I think Ben Arbuckle will probably be a head coach in 5 years. I think he was by far the best offensive coordinator on the market during this offseason. That was a home run hire, no question about it. And then you get to bring his quarterback coming to Norman with him. Now, here's the thing with John Mateer. John Mateer is a great quarterback. We've talked a lot about that. The difference, or the thing that I want to point out with John Mateer that really fires me up, is he very clearly is an elevator of the people around him. And that's one of the bigger question marks about Oklahoma heading into 2025. Look, we know we got the offensive coordinator right. We know we got the quarterback position right. The big question is, hey, does John Mateer have enough around him to have success in 2025? Well, when you have a quarterback like John Mateer, a guy that the one thing we learned out of spring is he's just making everybody around him better. That goes a long way in saying, hey, John Mateer might have the necessary pieces around him because he's getting the best out of every single football player that's on the field with him in 2025. We know what he can do with his arm talent. The thing that really intrigues me is what he can do with his legs. Not enough people are talking about this kid and what he is as an athlete. One, he's a big dude that you can get involved in the run game. Mike Hawkins was electric carrying the football for Oklahoma last year. Little bit of a slender guy as a true freshman. You probably didn't want to run him 20 plus times a game. And I'm not saying you're going to run John Mateer 20 plus times a game. He's 6'1", 225. Like, he's about as big as some of the off-ball linebackers that are going to be trying to tackle him. I might be more concerned about the linebackers trying to tackle him getting hurt than John Mateer getting hurt. Now, you look at John Mateer running the football, 54 missed tackles forced in the 2024 year. That is better than just about any running back in the country last year. This dude was a difference maker with the football in his hands, 4.7 yards per carry after contact, making people miss, bouncing off tackles. But I think my favorite element of John Mateer here is what he can do creating, not necessarily running the football, but extending plays, getting outside the pocket, throwing off platform. Look, we still have question marks about how good this Oklahoma offensive line is. Those question marks get mitigated a little bit when you have a quarterback that can deal with pressure and extend plays. I am a massive fan of John Mateer, not only because he's a really good quarterback that's going to be running this offense. I'm a massive fan of the impact that he can have on the other 10 guys on the football field in the 2025 year. Number 2 on the list, I'm going to go with Jaden Ott. A difference maker at the running back position that not only is one of the best running backs in the country when healthy, really good fit in this Ben Arbuckle offense. So you look at fundamentally, what does Ben Arbuckle want to do on offense? He wants to create space. Well, Jaden Ott's one of the best running backs in the country when it comes to having the football in space. You go back to 2023, home run hitting ability with the long speed that he has, the ability to be almost impossible to tackle when he gets to the second level in space. This is a guy that we were concerned about. Hey, does John Mateer have enough difference makers around him on this offense? I think the primary discussion was, hey, does he have enough good pass catchers on the outside? Well, Jaden Ott at the running back position, he's not just a running back. He's really an offensive weapon that you can use in a lot of different ways, including catching the football out of the backfield. Oklahoma was looking for that true running back one going into 2025. That was something they didn't have in 2024. It was just kind of a musical chairs of trying to figure out a running back that they wanted to run the offense through. Jaden Ott is now that guy going into 2025. Number 3 on the list, and a guy that I just think Oklahoma hit on, and that was Javanni Gibson. Look, I when Javanni Gibson committed to Oklahoma, I think the thing that excited me the most was I think he has the physical traits to be an SEC wide receiver. 6'2", 216 pounds. This kid just looks like a guy that can make a difference at the SEC. But you kind of had the question mark of, hey, is he going to be able to come from the FCS levels to the SEC and immediately be that guy? That's another thing we learned in spring. Like Javanni Gibson, healthy, is that guy. Now the question is, what does Javanni Gibson look like post-injury? If he comes back 100%, which is the expectation, you landed a difference maker on the outside. Like that's what we learned during spring practice. And more importantly, like a guy that can work vertically down the field, which is really important. One, because you want to be able to access the deeper third. Like we want a wide receiver that can work vertically down the field, win those 50-50 balls, run past defensive backs with that size and speed. Javanni Gibson can do that. I would argue that just having the threat of a guy like Javanni Gibson is going to help players like Isaiah Satania, is going to help players like Deion Burks. Now, why is that the case? Because it's going to create more space for those wide receivers. When you have a wide receiver in Javanni Gibson that, hey, when we're playing Oklahoma every Saturday, we have to respect what Javanni Gibson can do vertically down the field, averaged nearly 18 yards per catch last year. You start creating a little space underneath for guys like Isaiah, for guys like Deion Burks to be dominant after the catch, which is really their MO. So Javanni Gibson not only going to bring explosive plays to this Oklahoma offense, create a lot of opportunity for guys like Isaiah Satania and Deion Burks. Number 3, and I'm going to go to a freshman coming in, Michael Fusi. I can't wait to see what this kid looks like in fall camp. Like he was as advertised during spring. I'm not necessarily sure if he's ready to start as we speak right now. Well, what's it going to look like after 2 months of summer workouts? What's it going to look like after another 4 weeks of fall camp? This kid is ascending very, very quickly. We've seen a lot of 10 years ago, we wouldn't be talking about Mike Fusi because it was so rare to have offensive tackles come out of high school and be able to start in the SEC immediately. Well, guess what? We're starting to see that a little bit more routinely. I mean, you go back to last year, Josiah Thompson started almost every single game at left tackle for South Carolina, ended up being a very good tackle in the back half of the year. We saw Caden Proctor do it in 2023 at Alabama, and then Francis Maui Noah at Miami. Jordan Seaton did it last year at Colorado. we're starting to see the high-end tackles out of the high school ranks be able to come in and immediately provide value on the offensive line. Well, guess what? Michael Fasusi is that kind of guy in terms of the prospect he was coming out of high school. I'm not necessarily getting up here and saying he's going to be starting week 1, but there's a real chance that he's in the 2 deep, providing adequate depth, which was important for Oklahoma on the offensive line. Back half of September, early October, if you told me Michael Fasusi was holding down one of the tackle positions and playing good football, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, that's the biggest question mark we have for Oklahoma, and everything we heard out of spring is Mike Fasusi can have a day 1 impact for this Oklahoma team on the offensive line. Number 4, Kendall Daniels coming from Oklahoma State. I think on the surface, we're like, well, Kip Lewis, Kobe McKenzie, what's Kendall Daniels going to be for Oklahoma? Look, Brent Venables brought in Kendall Daniels with a plan. They ain't bringing one of the best players in the transfer portal and not having a plan of how they're going to use him. And the thing with Kendall Daniels is he gives you so much versatility in terms of how you want to use him. It's not hard to get this kid on the football field. I think there's no question about it. I don't know if he's better than Kobe McKenzie. I don't know if he's better than Kip Lewis. There ain't no question that he's one of the best 11 defenders on this Oklahoma football team. Well, go back to what he did at Oklahoma State. He's played safety. He's played nickel. He's played off-ball linebacker. He's come off the edge as a pass rusher. There are so many different ways that you can use this kid as a chess piece in your Oklahoma defense. We saw a guy like Abdul Carter, kind of provide that role for Penn State. And I'm not getting up here and saying that Kendall Daniels is going to be Abdul Carter, but having these versatile chess pieces that you can move around with a defensive wizard that Brent Venables is, like, he's going to know how to use Kendall Daniels. In fact, he probably knew how he'd use Kendall Daniels before he even brought him into Norman. Another thing I like about him is oftentimes you see defenses play with the nickel. Oklahoma plays with the cheetah. And Kendall Daniels can do that and provide you very solid coverage ability, but also provide you that elite run stopping ability that a third linebacker will give you. There's not that many bodies that can do what Kendall Daniels can do in terms of, hey, I can provide you nickel corner value while also giving you off-ball linebacker value stopping the run. He opens up so many possibilities for what Brent Venables wants to do on this defense. And I think Brent Venables is the perfect guy to use Kendall Daniels the right way. Here's another one. I think Isaiah Simmons at Clemson. And I'm kind of off-roading here. I didn't put this in my notes. Isaiah Simmons was kind of a similar guy. He's like a safety, off-ball linebacker, edge rusher hybrid. And look, there's not that many Isaiah Simmons kind of guys. Well, Kendall Daniels is that kind of dude. And Brent Venables probably has some experience, probably goes back to what he did at Clemson with Isaiah Simmons and say, hey, how can we utilize this kid in the best way to really allow him to put his fingerprint on this football game and on this football team? Isaiah Sategna at 6. We have to talk about him because I think he's going to start at wide receiver, a guy that can play the boundary, can play the slot. And I think when you have a guy like Deion Burks, who's also versatile, it's not hard to get Deion Burks and Isaiah Sategna on the football field at the same time. Elite yards after the catch ability, which is a perfect fit with this Ben Arbuckle offense. That was one of the things I loved the most about what Oklahoma did is they went out and got good players, but they got good players that are really good fits for what they want to do on both sides of the football. Guys like Kendall Daniels, but also guys like Isaiah Sategna. Look, we left off some good football players off this list. Marvin Jones Jr. certainly could be on this list. Jermichael probably could be on this list as well. These are my 5 guys plus the 6 with Isaiah Sategna. This team got better in the offseason, and these names I think will have big impacts on this Oklahoma team immediately in 2025. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Please let it fly in the comment section, and we'll talk to y'all later.